Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigor Mortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the East End Evil.
The gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have family. Had to put on my best Vin Diesel for that. But yeah, this is the third last Won't Think Straight story from Reddit NoSleep by Won't Think Straight. The guy who didn't believe in ghosts or the paranormal until he came face to face with it, and then he realized his entire life had supernatural things occurring in it. So he was sharing these stories that him and a bunch of his associates, basically, and affiliates may have come across and such. To try and gauge as to like, is there actually supernatural shit out there in the world?
I guess it is good to like give a quick rundown of the entire series if you're jumping in on the 15th story like we are now.
Yeah, exactly. Also, by the way, this series was like, it came out 11 to 13 years ago. Like, this story specifically, I think came out 11 years ago.
Yeah.
No, not, well, it says 11 years ago, but it's January 12th. January 2012 is when all of these stories came out. Unless that was when it was archived. Because all these stories are also now like officially archived, so like no comments more like on or anything like that. But yeah, like this story even, and these stories have also like shown like they have like whenever they mention a character from a previous story, they actually do have links to that previous story that character was affiliated with, in case you hadn't read that one yet. Because for us, like this started because of Gurgles and Bugman. Like we saw that on.
If they didn't name it something so like ridiculous
Really?
like that we had to find out why, we probably wouldn't have found these at all.
Yeah, we wouldn't have found the series like if we hadn't found that on the definitive creepypasta iceberg thing. And then we saw this that was part of a series, so we started from like story 1 and moved on. Like Girls and Bugman is like what story? Oh, it's actually story 2. But yeah, Girls and Bugman like that was kind of what started this, and like. Yeah, but like these stories are like if you like you can find any of them like on Reddit NoSleep like randomly. So it is kind of really cool that the stories do have like links to the previous stories for like context for other characters and such.
The only problem I have with the formatting in every single story is the list at the very bottom has all of them sequentially ordered, but the one that you're reading is not in the list.
Yeah.
So there are 17 stories, but the one you're on, you cannot possibly know which one it is because it doesn't show up in the list. It shows the one that was previous to it and the one after it.
True.
And like the slots keep changing.
Yeah.
Like number 10, the 8th orphan. If you go into the 8th orphan and then scroll down to number 10, now number 10 is No Sleep for the Innocent. Then you click on number 10 and then you go down or No Sleep for the Innocent. And what's 10 now? But now it's 8th orphan again. Like
yeah, it is very annoying. Like in that regard, like I understand like they don't want to add like that story, but like then have it so the stories previously are like, or the stories that follow are like the next number down, like the next number, not.
Yeah, just remove the hyperlink for the one that you're currently on.
Exactly. Yeah.
But have the words there still.
Yeah. I love how we're like already like talking to.
I mean, I've only brought this up like once or twice over this entire series, so
yeah, that's true.
Haven't talked about it enough.
Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, we're covering family tonight. Sorry, we're covering family tonight. By Won't Think Straight on Reddit NoSleep. You can check them out there as well as all the other Won't Think Straight stories. The previous one was Hangman. We're now jumping into family. Let's give our initial rundown before we get too far in the weeds. I'm going to recommend it.
I'm going to partially recommend it.
If I theoretically read it,
Let me start.
Okay, fine. I'll give it a partial for now, but I'm open to bumping that.
Okay. Well, let's dive in and see why we gave those recommendations and talk about it. Starting with the rundown. So, WTS, or Won't Think Straight, has recently caught up with Brad from the Time Shift Prank story. The story literally titled Prank that dealt with like time shifting shenanigans on a bridge.
Pranks.
Yeah. Pranks, yeah, that's what it was called. Yeah. Turns out he has another story that has come to light from recent events in his personal life. Brad had a younger brother named Paul. And when they were growing up, they couldn't be more different. Brad being energetic and extroverted, a bit of a wild kid, and Paul being quiet and introverted, preferring to draw indoors rather than go outside. Paul also had an imaginary friend he would draw in all of his family pictures. A tall, dark figure, black and red, missing their left forearm with black pits for eyes. He named this figure the Burnt Man, and despite creeping out his family, he said this figure just stood there listening and watching and was sad. One night, Brad asked Paul more about the Burnt Man, and Paul revealed that he was actually in the room with them while they like in their bedroom that they shared. And thus began a ploy that turned into a lifetime grudge between the two brothers, where Brad constantly bickered and fought with his brother in an attempt to get his own room, away from his creepy brother and the Burnt Man. Years went by, they moved, and Brad got his own room. His feud with his brother was still going strong, but they had all but forgotten about the Burnt Man, until Brad came face to face with him one night while going to the bathroom. The Burnt Man even tried to reach out to Brad and moaned silently and sadly with a mouth agape before disappearing as Brad screamed and woke up the people around him. More years went by, and the duo went their separate ways with separate occupations and family life. Their rivalry became one of mutual respect. But then Paul got in an accident and was critically in a coma at the hospital. When Brad arrived at the hospital, he saw the figure of the Burnt Man over his brother's bed, almost like a Grim Reaper figure. Brad shouted at it to leave, and it did. But his grieving parents, who were in the room, berated him due to the misunderstanding of the situation since they couldn't see the Burnt Man. They thought he was screaming and shouting at his brother to go. More recently, Brad got word that Paul had died at a chemical factory fire he was aiding in as an EMT. An explosion caught him, and shrapnel severed his left arm amidst the blast. Sound familiar? Brad's major regret is that his last words to his brother weren't goodbye or I love you, but a joking remark telling him he was awful for missing a weekend visit. While the Burnt Man, the spirit of his brother, no longer appears, Brad worries about his own spirit self appearing ahead of some end to reflect on his life. Finn. Yeah, that was family. But I suppose we should move on to everyone tolerates the Grand Inquisitions. At this point, I actually didn't notice anything that was like worth me like noting. So, do you guys have anything?
Well, I have a conjunction junction.
Of course you do.
And next stop, Conjunction Junction. Doot, doot.
It has kept me awake the past couple of nights thinking about how my own life has turned out. So I've captured it below to help get it off my mind and pass on with his blessing. And, like many siblings, their childhood was one of constant warfare with each other. But it was really the fear of the Burnt Man that started it all. It became really bad in the third year when Brad had to give up half his room and share it with Paul. It was a normal phase that every child goes through at that age. It had melted his eyes away and made his arm go missing. But he couldn't admit that he was afraid either, so his 8-year-old mind came up with an idea. It would take 6 more years until they moved to a bigger house and were able to finally have separate rooms that the feuds started to die down. It reached for him with a horribly burnt hand, the other hung uselessly by its side with the lower half missing. It was the burnt man, watching Paul intently, all while the family wept, oblivious to its presence. It only resulted in a sudden and severe reprimanding from his parents, thinking that he was shouting at his brother. It's time to put your stupid feud behind. It was said in jest about why Paul didn't have time over the weekend to catch up for a beer, but it was devastating knowing it would be the last memory both had of each other. So every now and then, Brad has been talking to the silence in the room, hoping that his brother, the burnt man, is still around to hear. Finn.
Whoa. So like, I think the burnt man, like 6 years after like the feud started and stuff like that, like they moved to a new place, and then the burnt man made himself known to Brad, who is also Paul, and his last words to it was something, and like, or his yeah, it's just, you skipped all because of the disjointedness. We don't know that, like, about the hospital coma thing. We don't know about like the actual, like, the death, like how Paul died. It's just like it's 6 years. It happened like 6 years after the feud started. So like he's still a teenager. So much sadder. Suddenly.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
Go ahead.
yeah, and there's the normal phase that every child goes through, and it melted his eyes and made his arm go missing.
Yeah.
It's a normal phase,
Oh, you know,
yeah.
I hate the molting phase. As like, God, the preteen molting phase is so annoying. There's like a 50-50 chance that you ascend to a spectral form after that. Like every child knows that.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the kind of weirdness we get when Mikey grabs all the sentences throughout the story that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ends, or buts, because there's always better words to use.
Yeah. And then I suppose we'll move on to the grammar in yellow.
I got a couple, surprisingly.
Okay.
This first one, Paul was lying in bed with a coma, with his parents crying around him. So for me, I've always heard this as like in a coma, not with a coma.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Especially because there's another with right after, so that doubles down. Like,
I mean,
you should change it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it would have doubled down with "in" as well, because like Paul was lying in bed in a coma. But
Oh fuck, you're right.
but it's regardless. I do agree. It should. I've always heard it be like in a coma, not with a coma. Like
Paul was bedridden in a coma.
Yeah, there we go. Also, I think it's like with a coma. It's like treating it like it's like the flu. Like, oh, he's in bed with the flu, or in bed with mono or something like that.
With a
it's
cold.
Not that, it's just
a coma.
Yeah.
And then the only other one I have is when they're talking about after they've grown up in their different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Said Brad had become a serious and buttoned down computer analyst since then. So when I read that, I'm like, should it be buttoned up, as in to like double down on the seriousness he takes his job? Because buttoned down sounds like he's the opposite of serious. Like, it's hard to be taken seriously He's going around the office showing off his chest hair to everyone.
I've heard button down, I think, as like, all right, button down, like we got to get this done, like kind of thing, like sort of a like got to get shit done sort of term, but yeah.
Let's see.
At least I think I've heard that.
So
She's talking about shirts.
it's more hunker down.
Yeah.
Button
you're
down
thinking
is
of.
an adjective that means conventional, conservative, or traditional. It can be used to describe a person's appearance or behavior or style of dress or work. He took a button down job as an options trader on the floor of the stock exchange.
Weird. I wonder why it's called that.
Yeah, that's from Merriam-Webster Dictionary.com. So, apparently, it's a term that originated in America between the 1930s and 1930s. It can also be
so we
used
know
to
where this
describe
happens.
someone. Yeah, yeah, in the 1930s. It can also be used to describe someone who is extremely conventional or unimaginative. He's so like some of the other examples, like I did not fit the button-down mold of most of my coworkers, or he's so creative, and yet when you meet him, he is buttoned down, not a kooky artist wearing a beret. So yeah, it's sort of like a serious, like it's supposed to mean like a conventional, conservative, serious kind of character, like businessman.
So this sentence basically says Brad had become a serious computer analyst since then.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
So it doubled down on like terms. on
Yeah,
the,
a little
on
bit.
the descriptor. Yeah.
Why so serious?
Mhm. Why so buttoned down?
Yeah.
Doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got for grammar.
All right. Then I suppose we'll move to actual thoughts. So I'm going to start with this one here. What unsettled Brad, though, was what Paul would draw. There would be the typical things every child draws: houses, animals, trees, and family. Family. What was unusual was every drawing of their family always had an extra person. Honestly, this was a mood with my niece cultist as she was growing up. Just like there are definitely some family drawings that she did where she added some extra members, and they were her ghost family.
Really normal.
Yeah, or her sister that lived in the walls, Bloody Mary.
This is fine.
Totally normal. Yeah. And then the next one here, next thing I have here. The family faces all had big smiles, but the stranger was a disfigured mess. 2 big black circles for eyes and a shapeless mass for a mouth. In every drawing of the stranger, he was missing an arm and had red streaks running through all over. So, straight up, Paul can see dead people, or is seeing a dead person, and that thing has been hanging out around their family. I've seen this movie before. That was my initial that was my initial impression as I was like reading through the story, and eventually we kind of get an explanation as to what it is, but I'll get into that later in my notes because they're prevalent to that. The next thing I have here, this could actually probably be a grammar inquisition, so I apologize. But at first, their parents were extremely concerned and asked Paul who that was. He told them nonchalantly it was his friend, the burned man. So there are 2 instances in the story where they refer to it as the burned man, but the rest of the times in the story, it's referred to as the burnt man. So like burned as in BURNED, and then for the most part, it's used as BURNT, burnt man. It just, the story, I think this might just be a typo, but the story can't seem to decide which one it is.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah. I know. I think it was the second time it was used. I actually I picked it up. And wasn't willing to let it go. So, But yeah, that's probably more of a grammar decision. So I did have one, but I shall move on.
Naming them, so maybe just he isn't even fully sure.
Yeah. Well, because like burnt man, I mean, it basically means the same thing. So yeah. But I'll move on to the next thing I have here. So I was saying earlier, like I've seen this movie before. Oh, this is another instance. It was a normal phase that every child goes through at that age. Granted, it was a bit more unsettling than having a unicorn or an elf for a friend. But Paul was psychologically well adjusted, and the figure didn't seem related to some real life predator or trauma. I've also seen this movie too, just like imaginary friends that are they're just a perfect red flag when it comes to a ghost story. It's like, oh yeah, like I was like, oh, I see, like it's grandpa, but like he's missing an eye and like looks kind of decomposed. That's your imaginary friend. And like in fact, I gotta ask here. He, in real life, does anyone ever actually have a whimsical description for their imaginary friend? Like all the ones I've known from younger relatives and like and like family and stuff like that were usually a tad unsettling.
Every time I describe my imaginary friend, it's always very mundane.
Oh yeah, green cloak, one glowing eye,
Yeah,
dark face,
totally normal.
little pudgy. Goes by review cultist.
Okay, laying on a little thick there.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, actually, I had a cousin that was they had one that was named Little Tim. His brother was also named Tim, but there was Tim,
It's
and then there was little
Tim.
Well, there was Little Tim, and apparently Little Tim wasn't actually little.
Oh,
And
so he's like a huge jack dude.
from what I understand, it's been decades, but like from what I
Yeah.
remember, I don't remember all the full description, but it was kind of like horrifying.
Nice.
But yeah, it was just like I like again, I've seen these movies before, like Toby from the Paranormal Activity movies. It's like, oh, it's just her imaginary friend. It's like, no, Toby's the demon that's been like haunting you guys. But I'll move on to the next thing here. Brad told him he was stupid for having an imaginary friend. Paul yawned and simply replied that he wasn't imaginary. He was in the room with them right now. In fact, he was standing right next to Brad, watching and listening, as he did every night. Brad felt a chill go up his spine. Should be go down his spine, but I'll allow it.
Why can't it go up?
I guess it could go up as well. Also, you and me both, Brad. Like, I knew this line was coming, and I still felt a thrill down my spine as I read it. Yeah, I actually really liked this moment. Like this, it's like it actually like did give me like a thrill. Even though I saw it coming, but like, and probably not in the same way, like chill on my spine as like Brad in the story, because like I see it as a fun, creepy moment, whereas Brad is probably shitting his pants right now. Probably needs
How
some
like
brown.
nonchalantly he was saying it too.
Yeah,
It
like
kind of
he yawned.
added to it.
Yeah. And like I could almost wonder if like that was just like an innocent thing, or if that was just like Paul being being a little shit to his brother. Just like hamming it up.
I think this was pre-shit phase though.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, this was what started the prank war. So
Prank War of '84.
yeah. But moving on to the next thing I have here. Another incident was when Paul was 17 and victim of a hit and run accident. He was rushed to hospital in a critical condition, but the doctors weren't sure if he would survive. Paul was lying in a bed in a coma, with his parents. Yeah, with his parents crying around him. When Brad arrived, he could see a disfigured Grim Reaper looming over the bed, as if holding vigil and waiting for its prey. It was the burnt man, watching Paul intently, all while the family wept wept obliviously to its presence. Just go already. Why are you still here? You're useless. Just leave us. Brad remembered shouting at the figure as it faded. Okay. It does state that Paul recovered from this. But when I was reading this part, I was a little worried that this was going to be how Paul actually dies, because Brad was shouting these words, these statements over Paul in a coma. And I've heard things like this happen, and most of the time it's in media, but I have heard it happen in real life, like real accounts of someone saying certain words or phrases to a coma patient, just give up living because of those like usually like keywords like let go or you're free kind of thing, like those kind of words will actually be patient in a coma to just give up living.
Damn.
Yeah. Usually it's in older people, like from what I've seen, like from event, like things that have happened like this, or like horrible circumstances, like and so usually like they're on death's door and they're just in a coma. But yeah, also a little like sort of like a sad spooky, like oh, because he said this thing, like literally words killed him.
Yes.
Also, not gonna lie, when I started reading this part, I thought it would be revealed that the burnt man was maybe Paul from this event, and this was like, and his and this is like his future ghost or a premonition of the incident that had been haunting him like through his childhood since. Especially since there was always this like aura that was described of sadness around the burnt man. And Brad has already had a story in this series which involved time shift shenanigans and such. But then later in the story, that was my notes right here, right, with the coma stuff. Then we get a little bit later in the story, we get this line or this bit. The burnt man was just another long forgotten childhood memory, filed away and never thought of again until recently, when a tragedy brought it all back into sharp focus. A few weeks ago, Brad learned that his brother had died while on duty. He was on scene with other emergency services dealing with a factory fire. A chemical storage tank had abruptly exploded next to his location, dousing him in burning chemicals. The flying shrapnel had sheared off his left arm above the elbow. Holy shit! I was right! Time ghost! I can't believe I caught it early on, and like, holy shit, it's confirmed.
How you caught it so early?
I don't know, man. I was like, oh, like
you're a lot more genre savvy than I am, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. Like I've seen stuff like this happen before in stories, so it's just like, yeah. But it's just such a cool idea, time ghosts. And actually going on to that, the next quote I have is my final one. Now much older and wiser, though, his fear is no longer of the burnt man, but that there's no one listening except himself. Another self that's been with him since childhood, watching in silence while it reviews his life, powerless to stop whatever fate awaits him, judging him with regret for the decisions he's made and is yet to make. Fuck. That is such, like, so this whole time ghost thing is so cool to me as a concept, but like this idea of like your dead future self visiting you in the past as sort of a purgatory, or perhaps like an afterlife journey that you must go through before moving on, or like a trial. I really like this idea, and the fact that it's told from like it's not told from the ghost's point of view, it's told from like the living person's point of view, so like they think this is like some creature, some entity that's stalking them, and like maybe it's like haunting the house, maybe it's haunting the family, but really it's haunting them because it is them from the future, because ghosts and like sure, ghosts might be able to time travel, like it's like they're ghosts, supernatural shit, and they can do shit.
Yeah.
I just really love that idea, and like, or like the thing, because you hear in stories with ghosts, like when you die, like you relive your life, right? So like what, like it's so kind of cool that like, yeah, what if this is like when you die, like you relive your life, and like, but there's a chance that past you as a child and stuff like that might be able to see you, because like sometimes people like can like they say like kids have like a that they can see things that like adults can't and such. So like I just love that idea that like yeah, like you're seen by your younger self in your past as you're reliving your life or reviewing your life and readying yourself for like the afterlife. It's such a cool concept that the story like kind of like tackled, and it's like while also making this sort of like a melodramatic and like kind of bittersweet like personal tragedy story.
Yeah.
But
what I thought it might have been is like because Paul could see his ghost, but Brad couldn't. It was because Paul was going to die preemptively. Meanwhile, Brad is going to die of natural causes or something like that, which might be the case. It might be because of the preemptive death compared to natural causes, or just because he's going to die of natural causes, he's not going to see his ghost until much later or something.
Yeah, or like maybe it could be. So I think along the lines that you're saying, like these time ghost phenomena happen because for ghosts or people who have regrets in their life. Like there was an obvious regret here between like for Paul like dying early, like dying ahead of like maybe when he was supposed to, or like died unnaturally before he got to really say like he loved his brother and or like the like kind of have that. So like now he's kind of having to review his life in the past.
Yeah, but doesn't Brad have like a way more regret because of the shit he's said and done? So shouldn't he be seeing the ghost even more? Like his own ghost, rather?
But what if like the trigger is actually like how like violently you died or abruptly you died? Like so like you say like Brad because like Brad will actually live to be like old age and like pass away naturally and then move on.
Sure.
Like he'll still have those regrets probably, but like he'll like maybe like his stuff gets reviewed like in the afterlife, whereas Paul like because his death was so violent and so like so dramatic or so traumatic, it catapulted his ghost into the past to review his decisions leading up to that point.
And
yeah,
the question I have is, what if there's two ghosts?
Okay, explain.
So we're gonna need more than that.
Paul can see his ghost, and then it's not until later that Brad can see the ghost, but we assume that it is the same ghost that Paul saw.
Oh god, Brad actually sees his like the ghost that haunts Brad Brad sees like when they move and all that stuff. And at Paul's bed, that's actually not Paul's ghost. That's actually Brad, who happened to just die a similar way.
Exact same way.
Yeah, a freak coincidence. I don't believe that, but that would be kind of funny in a morbid way. Because like we die like family. I don't have different deaths. I have family.
Speaking of the word family,
Yeah.
do you think that's a suitable title for this?
I kind of, brothers might have been another one, but that might also give away who the ghost is. I do think I think it's an appropriate one, and it's vague enough that like you're not it doesn't like give away what's going on, but it also does follow with the themes of the story, which is like this family this family being haunted by themselves, kind of, or by a member of the family, and how it affected them.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like actually, if you think about it, this is actually like the ghost actually. Oh my god, the ghost self-fulfilled a prophecy here, because like if the ghost hadn't started watching Paul, he wouldn't have started like drawing creepy like images of the figure. He wouldn't have told his brother that it was watching him in the bedroom. His brother wouldn't have gone on a huge like prank war that became a family feud or like a grudge match with his brother. They wouldn't have had, so they might have had a better family like relationship if they hadn't seen the burnt man.
He would have died the same.
He would have died the same, but like
the same job.
But their their relationship might have been better without the burnt man. So like because the Birdman technically interfered with the time stream. It's sort of the time we have a time paradox because like
Fucking time travel shit always gives me a headache.
yeah, I know. By the way, I did like as soon as I finished the story, I did send it off to Adam from RPX because he loves time travel shit, and like I told him, it's like, dude, you need to read this. Time ghosts. That's all I said. because it's vague enough. Like it is the theme of the story. It does kind of give away a little, but like as soon as I say time something, he is in. He will read the story regardless of being spoiled a little bit because it has time travel and he loves time travel. So, yeah. But yeah, that's all I've got for family. So, Mikey, these 10s are evil.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the twist of the burnt man being future Paul's ghost was a good twist.
It was a good twist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Surprised that he's being positive.
No, the way you were like setting this up, it sounded like you were like you had a problem, and then you gave a compliment. So it's like, what?
So here's the thing: this fucking story, I
Was
liked the
actually-
twist.
Yeah, like I was getting mixed signals.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I don't know. I personally feel like there needs to be some form of explanation as to why the ghost hops to Brad. Because normally ghosts haunt one person and only one person just to mess with them.
Yeah, but I could see it like the explanation here, like it's like he was reaching out to him and like even like, but it was never an aggressive thing. It was more of a sad thing that even like Brad noticed. So like it was basically like he was trying to reach out to his brother because he probably regretted like how they left things off before he abruptly died.
But then shouldn't he have been haunting Brad from the get-go?
I mean, he kind of was. He just Brad. It took a while for him to see the burnt man, because Paul said like he was in the bedroom and had been and was next to Brad the whole time, like at his bed, like he had been every night. So almost as if he was like watching over Brad and like just kind of like looking at him, like the way that like a ghost might do, like forlornly over a relative because like they care for them and they're like they wish they had said something in life. It is. I kind of wish. To your point though, I kind of wish maybe like Brad like had like hit his head or something like that, or like slipped and hit his head on the when he went to the bathroom then, and that's why he started seeing the burnt man. Like
He's able to see it because he can see it now.
yeah, like there could have been an explanation like in the story as to like why suddenly he's able to see it like 6 years after it starts appearing to Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Paul eventually stops seeing it altogether, right? So
yeah, and then it becomes So like I think that would be something that could be brought up is why Brad suddenly is able to see the burnt man
Because like only one of them can see him
at a time.
so
that
transferred.
Yeah, maybe it's even like that. Like it can only focus enough power to like make itself known to one of its entities, like, or one of its or one living person.
It saw that like Brad was having a hard time like dealing with all this, so it manifested himself for him to try to like help, quote unquote.
Yeah, or like maybe it was like more selfish reasons. Like again, like I've heard again in like hauntings and stuff like that, like ghosts have to exert a lot of energy to make themselves known in the physical world. So like maybe he could only like he spent the first part of his existence in the past watching, like looking at himself or making himself known to himself, like his past self, and then like down the road, like as time went on, he decided to switch over to Brad to make himself known.
Reasons. All right, that's my actual thoughts.
All right, in gamer.
Basically chimed in with most of what I was going to say. And after like reading the story, I didn't actually write any notes down.
Really?
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Yeah, it's just like the story kind of came and went, and like stuff happened, and some of it like you can kind of see it coming, and I don't know. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but it kind of felt like unremarkable in that aspect. Hence my partial.
Gotcha. Like it's like, and I've even commented like it does do things that we've seen before in like ghost movies or like ghost stories and other like and horror movies and such. Like, so I get it could be like there could be something said here that like it's a little unoriginal in that regard. But yeah, I mean that's what you feel.
Yeah. The one question I have is like with the burnt man, like his visual, him bleeding, is that like weird? Shouldn't he just be like a charred up husk?
I mean, not if he's getting like hit by chemical burns or like horrible like fiery chemicals. Like maybe he's just it's like sloughing, like from the heat. It's just like his flesh and stuff is like sloughing off.
Oh, so like his visual isn't like the way he was buried.
No,
it's you thought of it more like in the moment.
Yeah, like right after the explosion, he's like the chemicals are still dripping off of him. He as along with like more like I'm sure he's gristly a little bit, but like it's more or less like he's still wet and juicy.
She was described more like that. Aside from he's burnt, missing an arm, and bleeding because he's bleeding.
Yeah. That I think there could have been a little bit more of description especially when Brad gets to see him, because like Paul is describing him through drawings with like the red like lines and stuff like that. So it could be we could have gotten a better description, I guess, for the burnt man when Brad got to see him.
That's the only time that we really see him in the flesh, right?
Yeah, and it's also like the guy who's telling the story.
Right?
So
yeah, that's basically all I have left to talk about because I don't know, like not to sound mean, but it was kind of unremarkable in one way or another because like I didn't love the story, but I didn't hate it, and like there weren't like that many grammar things to worry about either. It was just kind of like, and like a lot of the stuff I've kind of seen before, and some of the stuff about the Burning Man I didn't fully get, like the bleedingness of him,
the visual.
Yeah,
which is kind of remarkable in its own way because the visual is pretty striking on the surface, but like yeah, like aside from like a burnt man missing a left arm, that's it.
It's a cool visual.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's a burnt man missing a left arm and also bleeding everywhere apparently. Yeah. But the visual itself is cool. It's just like my whole problem with the creature is, as you brought up, his reveal didn't make sense, and also I didn't personally get the whole. I didn't understand why he was bleeding if he's meant to be a charred up husk. But in your description, as you said, if it's meant to be more of like this is what he looked like in the moment of getting killed, then it would be like more wet and sloughing and bleeding and stuff. But it wasn't described as that. He was described as he's a burnt guy missing an arm and bleeding.
Also, that's also sort of like a horror thing here is like in this the way this story portrays the afterlife, upon leaving your soul leaving your body, you leave the way you look in death.
Yeah.
And you stay that way. So like because like yeah, like it definitely feels like his imagery or like his description or like what he looks like is like when he expired, like shortly after or like right at or right after the blast hit him.
Question.
Yeah.
How did you personally view him, like his skin and stuff? Was he still like a pinky kind of color.
I also saw
But
him as
just
like
burnt?
sort of like crispy, but also like goopy, like bloody and crispy is kind of what I saw him as, like a very fresh burn victim.
Okay, because the way I saw him is I took inspiration from the art that the child did, where he
Yeah.
colored him black and red,
Yeah,
which
that's
for me made me visualize that he is a charred husk, top to bottom, like they had to fish him out of a house fire.
gotcha. Yeah, I also like that's how I drew my inspiration was from like the black and red. I just envisioned it more of like a sort of a gooey or like a crispy yet goopy. I'm not goopy's the wrong word. Like a crispy yet bloody corpse.
Yeah.
Just because like the reds and stuff like that, and also I guess the reds could have also been like the raw nerves and stuff that were exposed because like the skin had burnt off and such. But
Yeah, it could be. Was it actually described as blood? I don't remember.
it kind of it's like red lines like leaking off the wound and stuff like that. So yeah, kind of.
Okay. It says it without saying it.
Yeah, but again, like I think I think there could be something said that like because Brad sees the character and Brad is the one telling the story, we could have gotten a better description from him when he saw the creature when he was doing that bathroom run.
Definitely, yeah.
And we could have also gotten like a scene there where like how he suddenly was able to see it. Like maybe again he slipped on something and like or like bumped his head or something like that. And then when he wasn't like enough to like knock him out or anything, but when he got back up, like holding his head, like suddenly like things came into view and he saw the creature. Like that could have also explained why suddenly he was seeing the creature or seeing the burnt man. So we keep calling him a creature, but he's a person. he's just the
but he didn't know that at the time.
True, yeah. The entity.
The entity formerly known as Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much a the artist formerly known as Prince. But yeah, if that's all we got to go, I guess we'll move on to final thoughts. Actually thinking I might bring mine down to a partial recommendation. On the high end still, but just because like there's definitely some room for improvement. But
Yeah.
I do really like the bittersweet message to the story and like the cool ghost concept here of like a ghost going back in time to review its life and maybe even being seen by by its past self and even like people close to it. And there is like the family like title there is a bittersweet message here about like family and regret, like not saying I love you enough to your family members and stuff before you don't get a chance to anymore. So there's sort of like a bit of a melodrama to that, which I also appreciate in a horror story because as much as I don't like to cry, I do like a tragedy in a horror story.
Yeah.
Like it makes it more, it grounds it more. But yeah, so I'll bump this down to a partial recommendation, just because like we could have gotten a little bit more details about the burnt man. Like maybe maybe have Brad when he first sees it like describe it in full detail in like from a horror angle, and then we get like the fact that like he realized that it's not just reaching out for him like aggressively, it's reaching out to him in a sad way.
And trying to like pick him up if he fell at that point, you know.
Yeah, that could have been it. Like, that's why he actually reached out to help him. Was like that kind of thing.
Instinctively, even though he knows he can't because he's a ghost.
Yeah, or even like when when he's told off by Brad at the hospital room, like maybe have him like being described as looking very hurt before he disappears,
or like turns around and leaves.
Yeah, just like
turns around and walks through the wall.
Yeah. I know this is like we're talking about some really cool, serious, like somber moments, but like all I can think of now suddenly is him just like turning around, walking
away.
no, him just like turning around, walking through the wall / window, and just like falling,
scaring whoever else is there.
No, like going out the window and then falling because gravity suddenly kicks in, like a Looney Tunes thing. Not to make this like super silly, but there's my critical silly moment, I guess.
It's got to happen at least once.
But yeah, I will partially recommend this one. So, Mikey, these stands for evil.
Well, as was discussed, I'd like more detail as to how Brad is it suddenly able to see Paul. Even a simple thing like Brad hypothesizing a reason why would be enough for me. Like just something to make you go, okay, well that explains why it's switched over to Brad from Paul.
Yeah.
And then also, as stated, I did enjoy the twist. Having a ghost from the future traveling to the past to undo the future that is a coup.
The
I
ghost.
don't think he was trying to undo the future.
No, yeah, he was reviewing his life, basically. Like he was reviewing his choices and his regrets, basically.
Yeah.
But you could also argue that sort of the burnt man caused the divide between the brothers, which in turn caused him to become a burnt man.
He's his own ghost grandfather. Like again, he created a time paradox by going back in time. Absolutely, 100%.
That ever makes sense.
What?
None of that shit ever makes sense. Like I don't get that.
It's time travel and quantum mechanics, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's sci-fi. Literally, like it's sci-fi writing 101. Like I literally had these kind of conversations and these kind of themes being like explored in both a sci-fi class and a creative writing class when I was in college.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. And so that said, I'm still going to give this a partial recommendation.
Yeah. Also, quick, one final criticism note before I mute myself, so that Gamer can talk. I just suddenly envisioned because we were talking about like how this is like a ghost time traveler kind of thing, and how he was trying to stop things. I immediately now think that like when he's reaching out to Brad and is like moaning and like trying to talk but can't. I immediately he's trying to make a reference. It's like, come with me if you want to live.
Come with me if you want me to live.
Or come with me if you want to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Gamer.
For me, I basically kind of chimed in on my thoughts already in my notes. I felt like it could have done more, although as you both said, I like the concept of the ghost basically going back in time for one reason or another. That part's cool. It does make me wonder, like, the one thing it made me think of is all the kids out there who have imaginary friends.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if, like, all of their imaginary friends are just them from the future. Yeah. In one way or another, and then like something happens to make them look that way.
Yeah. Well, and like I'm sure, like I was saying earlier, like do like in real life, do imaginary friends actually look like elves and unicorns? But like, and I'm sure there are like kids' imaginary friends that are whimsical and stuff like that. But like, what if those are just demons? But yeah, also like like the majority of imaginary friends I that you hear about that are like actually just like people, or like that definitely seem like some kind of like humanoid like being. Yeah, what if those are just that person? Yeah, like you said, like what if those are just those kids when they're growing up and they died abruptly or something like that, and they're just reviewing their life.
It could be anything, even if it's a weird fantasy thing like a unicorn. For all we know, that person. What?
No. Can you go and I'll interject after.
Okay, I was gonna say, for all we know, that person grows up to be like a comic book artist, and like their comic book is based on this magical unicorn that goes around doing things. But like them as an artist, maybe they died drawing like their their last issue or something like that, or like
Yeah.
so like that's what they embodied as a ghost.
That's definitely the PG version.
Yeah, what's your version?
They grew up to be a furry and,
Oh, okay.
and die in their fursuit.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So that's why we have
That's a choice.
unicorns and or they're a cosplayer that died in a horrific unfortunate convention accident.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're dressed up as like an elf or they're dressed up as their fursona that's a unicorn.
That makes perfect sense.
That only explains like all that it's not demons. It's just people unfortunately dying in rainforest in some future rainforest convention.
Seems legit.
God, that's sad, and also kind of like funny in a very morbid way.
It is, yeah. So yeah, overall, because I forgot that we're on my final thoughts.
Yeah.
I was gonna give it like a low partial just because like it was sort of unremarkable the first time I read it. But the more I think about it, like it is interesting and I like the concepts of it. So I'll bump it up to like a high partial, like bordering on recommending, but it needs, I think, a clear description of the burnt man and a reason as to why Brad suddenly was able to see him.
True. All right.
But the rest of it was pretty well written, so I still like super lightly recommend it, but it needs some work a little bit.
Okay. It makes sense. But so I guess partial recommendations all around.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like cool high concept and like emotional impact. Just it could have used a little bit more to punch it up to a full recommendation for a lot for all of us, it seems. But that'll do it for this week's episode. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. We are some of us are on Blue Sky. Mikey is at the East Ends for Evil, and I'm at Review Cultist. You can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah! And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon. We have special episodes, early access, and extra content. To all our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay, and as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely. Because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void, across time and space, to see our past selves and their mistakes. God knows I have many.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Rather, I was gonna say that I have many, not that you have many.
Oh, I know. I will. Yeah. I won't. I'll be humble.
Mm-hmm.
And for the authors of these stories who write these stories and post them online, for people to get spooked at or even sad at, or feel something, because without your stories, we wouldn't have much of a show. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the East End for Evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.